What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with my guy, Andy Herman of the Pack-A-Day podcast and attendee of yesterday's victory over the Houston Texans. Andy, what was it like being at Lambeau? I loved all the white in the stands. Obviously, the fans in attendance got the memo, absolutely knew the assignment.
Yep.
Great game to be at as well.
Yeah, very much so. It was a ton of fun. I thought the atmosphere was fantastic. Obviously, you had the whiteout, and then you had, I thought, a crowd that was one of the better crowds that I've been a part of in a while. I thought they were super raucous on third downs, which was really fun to see. Nobody yelling to sit down, no issues like that, which is always a plus.
Right.
Weather was amazing. And of course, you get a victory over the Texans as well. So could not have asked for much more on a late October day in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That is for sure.
I know you definitely probably most likely want to begin with Liverpool's win over Chelsea, but we're not going to go there today. Congratulations on that, by the way.
I had a plan when you were going to say, like, welcome to Victory Monday. I was going to say, wow, very big of you on a Monday after a Liverpool game.
Not giving you an inch there, Herman.
No,
not an inch. No, that
didn't.
was a great match, but I was glad I got to miss the second half because the Packers were playing because I didn't need to have my heart stomped on. But let's start on the offensive side because I know we're going to talk about Jeff Hafley and that defense. Clearly, I would say the story of the day. But looking at the offense and the fits and starts on that side of the ball, clearly a lot being talked about already regarding Jordan Love and the interceptions. But I thought it was interesting, and I don't know if you've had a chance to go back and watch the broadcast yet, but at the end of the game, legit the shot, I believe, directly after they show the kick go through the uprights and the Packers have won the game, they cut to Matt LaFleur, and he is taking off his headset, and there is just a complete, almost frustrated sigh. And I think you heard him say in his post game, they kicked our ass defensively, meaning the Texans.
Yep.
That was a game where you could tell that he was frustrated throughout. And obviously the Texans, you got to tip your cap. They are an excellently coached team. They have a lot of talent, though they were missing a number of starters yesterday. But, man, they really flummoxed LaFleur throughout the contest. And they got theirs. I think Matt is too good a coach. He's got way too much talent on that side of the ball to be kept down forever for an entire game. But you could tell the Texans got after it when the Packers were on offense yesterday.
I love so much about this, and it's such a great way to start off because I think the first thing, and like you said, I know Houston was missing a couple guys. You're in a big-time fight against, in my opinion, one of the best defensive coaches in the league in DeMeco Ryans.
Yes, sir.
In a game where you didn't have your fastball. It was probably a B-, C+ effort on offense. You threw 2 bad interceptions, and you still put up 24 points.
I know,
right?
If
that's the bad game, and I don't disagree with Matt LaFleur, if that's getting your ass kicked, which, again, for a good portion of the day, it felt that way, and they still found a way to put up 24 points, man, does that make me feel really good about what this offense can ultimately become. I did feel like Green Bay stubbed their toe on a couple different occasions. I thought Houston's defense was awesome. Just watching it live, they were so fast. They were ready for everything. And I give Matt credit. He was trying to stretch the field down the field. He was trying to stretch it the width of the field and do some of the reverses and end arounds and jet sweeps, all of it. He was trying everything he could. And then to get it right up the middle with Josh Jacobs after doing some of this stuff on the outside, he was doing some of the motion stuff where he brought it back inside on a run. He was trying a lot of different stuff. Sometimes I think can get frustrated where it's like Matt didn't really go outside of his comfort. He just would kind of maybe make a little bit more vanilla. He was trying everything, and Houston just kept being ready for it and ready for it and ready for it. Thankfully, you had some of those explosive plays. Obviously, the Dontavian Wicks throw, and then the Tucker Kraft throw was just an absolute missile. That was super fun. But yeah, I give Houston a ton of credit, and I can understand why he felt that the way that he did, and I think he's still right. But it still gives me a lot of confidence that if that's one of your bad games against a really good defense, I will take that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, what he mentioned post game when he was asked about Jordan's second interception and the concept there, they thought coming out they were going to cover 3, right? And it ended up being man across the board. It felt like the Texans were kind of maybe not playing dial-up coverage, but really keeping them guessing throughout the game. And I think to your point on the end arounds, the jet sweeps, things like that, we saw, trying to get Watson involved, trying to get him on a reverse. And they were so sound on the back end, they being Houston, that, none of that really worked. I mean, you saw the attempt to read the ball on the 3rd and 1 backed up in their own end, trying to, get a drive going there. And that again played very, very soundly. And it was frustrating in the moment. I was like, what? You got Josh Jacobs. What are you doing? But it's funny going back and watching it because pre-snap, you see Jordan do what, traditionally has been their can call. So
Yep.
really they had 2 plays on, or I would assume they had 2 plays on, and Jordan thought, well, we can probably make this work with Reed. So I would suspect that was a call at the line of scrimmage, but all day long, everything they were trying along the perimeter really kind of was bottled up. And I loved coming out of halftime and finally just kind of feeding Josh Jacobs. And you saw him start to get kind of in a rhythm. And it does, we've talked about this, and it's weird to think of a running back as a rhythm player, but Jacobs seems to be that kind of player where you get him 3-4 touches and all of a sudden, yeah, he's finding those creases. He's finding the cutback lanes. I do think they blocked better.
Yes, very much so.
There's one in particular, his long run, where he squirts through the middle, or he finds a backside cut and gets through the middle, and all of a sudden he's off to his left and he's up the left sideline. That's all made possible by a phenomenal reach block by Sean Ryan. Yeah. I just thought, again, the execution seemed to be much better in that regard. But yeah, as far as whatever they were trying to do on the perimeter, Houston was ready for it. Houston was very well, to your point, very well coached. It's kind of funny to come up against a team that is so well coached on defense because Matt's been able to really get into his bag and do a lot of different stuff against most defenses in this league.
Yep.
Then you get to a game. I mean, even think back to the Vikings game where, yeah, they're down 28-0. It's really frustrating. But then they come storming back and score a ton of points in the second half. That never felt like it was on offer against the Texans.
No, not at all. And just going back to that 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1 to Jaden Reed too, like, there's something on film that they saw of like either that they crashed down inside or something like to call that play. You guarantee you're thinking like, all right, we've seen something here. We're going to get the ball in the hands of our best playmaker. This might go for 15, 20 yards, not just the one you need. And Houston's still all over it. And I think that's where he's probably like has that big exhale at the end of like, man, we did everything and they had answers for everything. And I'm very thankful we came away with a win in this one because they did, they were just very, very well prepared and focused. And it almost felt like no matter what sleight of hand Green Bay was doing, Houston just gonna say, you go do your parlor trick.
Do that.
You go do that.
Go ahead.
We're just gonna chill here. And then once you actually snap the ball, then we'll react to whatever it is that you're doing. And we're just gonna play our I thought it was a great game by Houston. And again, kudos to Green Bay for making enough plays to get the win and getting it when you needed it most on that last drive.
I mentioned it earlier, and we should talk about it because it is a very hot topic online, at least. Jordan Love and his propensity to throw some interceptions in a game. And, man, I know the Favre comparisons are there, and Coach kind of pushed back on that yesterday for good reason. And I don't want to make it ever as simple as, oh, he's this guy or he's that guy. He's clearly Jordan Love, and he's playing his own brand of ball, and he's incredibly productive and some insanely exciting throws, exciting plays. But, man, you remember how when Aaron was at the height of his powers and the camera would pan and you would never, ever worry about the football?
Yes.
We're back to, okay, I'm kind of holding my breath. Every time he throws it. I do expect it to be a good outcome, but I'm not assured of it. That's where I'm living right now, Andy.
And I think that you first of all hit it right on the head, is that we have come from over a decade of watching the most risk-averse quarterback in the history of the world. Like, this is not just like a guy that kind of took good care of the ball. This was the most risk-averse and most taking care of the football quarterback ever. So yes, going to anyone else is going to feel like, oh my goodness, like this, I forgot what this feels like. I forgot a little bit about what this feels like. I've been pushing back a little bit on the gunslinger narrative with Jordan because I went back. There's 8 interceptions so far, 7 or 8, whatever it is. I think it's 8, right?
It's 8.
8 interceptions.
He and Mahomes tied for the lead.
Tied for 8.
Although Jordan has played 2 or less, not played 2 as many games, 2 less games, 2 fewer games.
There are 3 for me that I want to get out of the system a little bit, meaning like, let's correct, like the throw to Wicks down the field against Minnesota on first down where he gets the all out blitz and he just throws one up for grabs. Don't like that one. All right. Yeah. Obviously the stumbling, bumbling Will Levis-esque throw against the Rams where he tries to throw it out of bounds and it gets pick 6. I want to get rid of that one. And then I would like to get rid of the Christian Watson one yesterday as well, just because again, first down, you're getting some pressure.
That's the bad
Watson's
one.
Going across. That's a bad one. Like those are the 3 for me. And we're still talking, we're talking 3 throws in 5 games that I'm like, I don't need those. I don't need those. The other ones, I'm with more Matt LaFleur, where he likes to say, listen, there's a cost of doing business in this league, and we want Jordan to rip the ball, and more good things are going to happen than bad things that are going to happen when he does that. And Jordan said yesterday, I'm not just going to be this check down guy, which I agree with. I am all in on those. But if we're talking 3 throws through 5 games that I'm really like, all right, we can't do it. And I get, we're used to Aaron and not having those turnovers, and they can't happen. But I trust Jordan, Matt, and especially Tom Clements more than anyone to maybe like just rein this in a little bit and figure out that sweet spot, especially because it's not like we don't have a sample size of seeing him take great care of the football. We saw it in the second half of the last year where he was phenomenal at taking care of the football, to the point where what you were mentioning earlier, every time it did pan down the field, not only did I feel like it was going to be, not intercepted, I felt like a big play was going to happen almost every time it panned down there. So to me, it's still a small enough sample size this year to be like, I'm not quite there on the full gunslinger mentality. And I think there's a few throws that, yes, you would like to have back. This is a young quarterback that's still testing his superpowers out and figuring out, what can I get away with? What can I not? I'm sure a huge contract too also makes you maybe want to make a few more plays. This will all get figured out in due time. And I think this is going to be a good part of the learning curve for Jordan Love as a star quarterback in this league.
I'm glad you put it that way, because it's like, it is a learning process, right? And he is still such a young quarterback. And that's, I do think, because of the fact that he was drafted in 2020 and we're sitting here on 2024, and you're thinking, he's been in the league so long. And yes, he's been in a building for that amount of time, but he's still on his second year as a starter. He has not even come close to reaching his full potential. Though he has been paid, to your point.
Yes, to that full potential.
The idea is he's going to continue to grow. Well, this is part of that growth. And I'm with you in the sense that there's not a ton there that I'm like pulling my hair out about. Like the one in LA, no doubt. And the one yesterday, it is funny though, because I did say this last night on Twitter. Like, we did watch Rodgers for a good 10 years, and every time he took a sack, almost all of us, and I include myself here, were yelling, just throw it.
Well, get rid of the ball.
We got our wish yesterday.
Yes.
That's pretty much what happened on that play with the overthrow to Watson. That's, again, something hopefully he takes on board and goes, okay, if there's a guy breathing down my neck, we expected zone, we got man, it's just not there. Just eat it. Just eat it. You the ball is too precious. And the fact that the Packers won this game, not -3 on the takeaway margin, is absolute insanity. And it does speak to a pretty darn well coached team by the Packers and good execution, at least on the defensive side of the ball. But man, it's a tough way to live when you're giving the ball away as much as the Packers did yesterday. And that's why I understand fans' frustrations, right? We know the assignment. Take care of the ball, you're usually going to come out on top, or at least, especially if you can come out on the plus side. But watching this live in real time, I get how fans are really frustrated by it, because again, it's happened with some regularity this season.
No, very much so. And again, Matt said it perfectly yesterday. The number one job of a quarterback is still to take care of the ball. Like, that is job number one. You've got to figure out a way to not put it in harm's way. So again, I'm not excusing anything from Jordan. I think there are things that he still has to clean up. I'm just more of like, I don't think I'm quite ready to go in the full. He's just putting the sunglasses on and blazing. Like, he's just, he's doing everything. He's going full Jay Cutler out there.
I'd love that. Yeah. That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing, actually. But no, I think he's going to be just fine. I think he'll rein it in a little bit, and I think he'll get to a good sweet spot in between all the playmaking and maybe a couple of those turnovers.
Let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. Jeff Hafley and that plan against a quarterback who has, looked really good so far in his young career. It's funny, though, the one game where he really struggled prior to yesterday during this season was the game in Minnesota against the Vikings. And you saw a lot of that. It was funny because, like, you know how we talk about blueprints, and okay, that's not really a thing, but man, sure felt like Jeff Hafley saw what the Vikings did and utilized a whole lot of those same concepts. Maybe not the exact same pressures, but the idea of showing 8 up front and then dropping into cover 2, or just not sending more than 4 guys, but you never really know which 4 are coming and where and who's working off of each other. That was, I dare say, somewhat of a masterful performance from Hafley to just completely flummox one of the best young quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, and I have to shout out too, because I think it was Matt Schneidman who tweeted out the pressure percentage in this game of like how many players they brought more, and it was like 17 point something %, which is near the league low.
Bottom.
League bottom. As I was watching that in real time, it felt like they were bringing somebody extra on every single play. And that's the beauty of it, is that it felt like they were bringing
the Texans
an extra
thought so
player
too.
Exactly, like on every single play, to the point where like late in the game, I'm like, can they continue to bring blitzes like this? Like they're going to get caught at some point. And then you go back and you watch and you're like, oh my goodness, like they're dropping 7. You just don't know what 7 are dropping. And it felt like 6 guys were coming, but it was actually only 4. And they would fool them so much that Xavier McKinney would be coming right off the edge, or Eric Wilson would be coming right in the middle of the defense. And they didn't have an answer for it. And to your point about a blueprint, sometimes, again, quarterbacks get MOs for certain things or things that they struggle with. Some quarterbacks love that snapshot of what they are going to see on defense so that they know exactly where to attack with it and they know where to go with the ball. And maybe it's just something with CJ Stroud where when you've got all of that chaos post snap and not knowing any idea, there's a play, I think Fennel posted, I posted it on Twitter as well, where they line up with the 7 across the line of scrimmage. Yep. And at the very beginning of the play, Javon Bullard is basically lined up as like an inside linebacker at the very start of it. He ends up as the outside corner. The outside corner, Keyshawn Nixon, ends up at safety. Evan Williams, who's chilling in single high safety, ends up being the other safety in a cover 2. Jair Alexander is like the only person on the field that ends up actually in a spot where
doing what you think he might do.
Exactly. And then you've got 2 linebackers that just drop into easy zones. One of them being Preston Smith, normally obviously your defensive end / edge rusher. You've got Quay that just rushes back in the middle of that cover 2 zone to cover that seam. And then you've got 4 guys coming. You have no idea which 4 are going to come. And you end up with Xavier McKinney right off the edge with a sack, who you're not expecting to be the guy that's going to come because there's guys on that side that he is probably going to be responsible for. And you end up with the easiest sack. And then you look down the field and you're like, well, where could have CJ Stroud gone? There's no place to go. It's absolutely beautiful stuff. I joked yesterday. I said I was actually very disappointed in this defensive performance because it reminded me that this could have existed for the past 3 years in Green Bay, and nothing like this existed like this in the last 3 years in Green Bay. So take that for what it's worth, but it is fun to watch right now.
There was a moment too late in the game where Hafley kind of spun it on its head. It was great because you could tell clearly the Texans were frustrated. Stroud throwing his helmet at one point, like they were completely out of sorts. And then they showed a pressure look, and the Texans kept, you talk about max protect. They kept almost everybody in. They ran 2 guys out on routes, and Hafley didn't bring anybody. Like, he just dropped everybody into a normal, I think it was a cover 2. And again, nowhere to go with the ball. He has to eat it. Like, that was the kind of day where Hafley was just a step ahead every single down and distance, every single moment. Obviously, the Texans are still a very talented team, and my word, Mixon almost won this game single-handedly for the Texans. And that was the one issue. I was surprised how much they got away from running the football, they being the Texans, just because, like, especially after Quay went out, it felt like they had something there where the Packers seemed to be struggling with some of the run fits, some of the backside cuts that Mixon was making, really didn't have an answer for a guy sometimes there, but not able to make a tackle, whether it was a safety, a linebacker, what have you. Obviously, they caught Jair on a blitz once with that big gain up the left side. But for the most part, that was mostly just Mixon making things happen in space. And I was, again, like they did somewhat at that last drive, and they're trying to salt the game away, and they couldn't really do so. But for the most of the second half, I just kept thinking, why are they getting away from it? Like, because to me, that was the one area where the Packers seemed to like not have much of an answer.
Yeah, first of all, I thought Mixon was fantastic in this game, just finding those little creases and then accelerating past. Like he was really fun to watch in person. And then to your point, it just felt like they probably needed to stick with that a little bit more. I went into the game wondering, like, all right, what poison is Green Bay going to pick? Because if you dedicate everything to stop Joe Mixon, you're probably going to give up some plays on the outside because it's going to be a tough day against Diggs and Dell. That ended up not being the case, obviously. But then, or were they going to choose, like, we're going to take CJ Stroud out of it in this passing game, but we could, be susceptible a little bit to Joe Mixon. I don't think it was quite as cut and dry and easy as just that, but I think overall they were very focused on making sure CJ Stroud was uncomfortable and was not going to win with his arm. And I don't want to say allowed, but were willing to say, hey, if Joe Mixon goes for 250 and we lose that way, we'll tip our cap and say, well done, good job. But I think probably the Texans needed to have a little bit more patience in that situation. And I think that sometimes is the bet that you're willing to make as a defensive coordinator, is saying, hey, yeah, we're going to give them these. Are they going to be patient enough? Or are they going to keep trying to get some of those shot plays? And we're just not going to give it to them. And maybe Houston could have been, maybe in hindsight they would have liked to have been, but Mixon got his, and it just never was in a situation where CJ Stroud and that passing attack got going.
I loved how much when they did get away from it for, again, whatever reason, they tried to get Stroud on the edge a few times. They tried to use the running game to open up a passing game. But man, the way Hafley moved Rashan Gary around yesterday, been waiting for that, because there were at least 2 plays in particular where Stroud tries to get on the edge and Gary is right there coming off a stunt where, Stroud clearly thinks he's got time. And Gary is just so fast and closes so quickly that Stroud eventually has to throw the ball away. And you could tell, again, frustration setting in there, because you finally get the running game going. You think, okay, we're going to play action off of this. Gary's going to bite down the line because that's what he usually does. But Gary, I thought, played an incredibly disciplined game. And again, moving him around, the Texans not really knowing where he was going to be on any given down and distance, I think really served the defense well. And it really kind of unlocked Rashan for the first real time this season.
There's that one play where he's lined up on the outside and then just pre-snap, he does
a little
Pink Panther, little stroll to the middle of the field. He's like, I'm not doing anything here, just going on a nice little Sunday walk in the middle of October. And then boom, he's like just rushing up the middle. That's beautiful to watch. And then somebody asked me about it last week of like, why aren't they using Gary like more like a Zadarius Smith? And I'm like, they did last game. They did it one play. Nothing really came of it. I'm like, do I think they could do more of it? Sure, absolutely. But I'm like, when you do get those opportunities, you got to do something with it. And it was just one play, I think, the week before. But this week they did a little bit more of it. It was a lot more successful. I think, it was Hafley who said a couple weeks ago that, yes, we need more from Rashan Gary, but Rashan Gary needs more from us as well. I just love the way that he puts everything. And he knew that, we got to figure out a way to get this guy going. And I've got to be better in getting him in some advantageous matchups, because I know going into right before he said that, he was the 3rd most chipped player at defensive end in the league. And that makes it very difficult for you to get going. So let's maybe move him around a little bit, get him in some advantageous matchups. And Jeff Hafley, once again, was masterful in doing that in this game. And Rashan Gary really paid it off.
Now, obviously, the defense benefited from the performance of Daniel Whelan. The punting in this game was incredible. The way he flipped the field was absolutely outstanding. You throw in the new kicker who makes all of his extra points and then has a game winner walk off. You're like, you know what? There's special teams solved, until you remember. Do they practice punt returns, Andy? What does Rich Bisaccia do during the week? I mean, between Nixon letting the ball bounce and hit his guy, and then Jaden Reed, I don't know what he's thinking, fielding the ball inside the 5-yard line. What are we doing on punt returns, Andy? I can't handle it.
I don't know. I can speak to the fact that I have seen Rich Bisaccia undress people in real time for not catching the punt when it's in the air, like just going nuts on them, saying like that can't happen. So I know that this is not something that is like out of the blue and these guys have not heard before. I am sure he was losing it on the sideline when he saw, like, to the point where like I was almost scared in the stadium of like, what's Rich Bisaccia going to do with that ball hitting the ground? I'm like, somebody is going to get hurt because of this. So like, I know that this is something that he stresses. I don't know how you let that. The only thing I can think of, and I think is probably now the sun's to his back. So like, we can't blame the sun here.
Right.
Somehow, some way, it felt like at the last second, he lost the ball in some capacity where he didn't feel like he could cleanly catch it. And it would happen so late that he didn't have the ability to tell everyone to get away from it.
Yeah.
That might be the case. That's still not an acceptable, like you can't lose the ball and you can't make it so that you can't feel the punt and get everyone away. So the fact that he lets it bounce, there's multiple people around. Of course, it goes off of Ballantyne. Texans recover and they get a touchdown right after that. I think 2 plays after. It just cannot happen. And this is what we talked about. I think it was last week, right? Because I think I asked you, like, what do they do at punt returner? Like Jaden Reed is supposed to be their quote unquote, like safe guy. It's not probably going to be always the most dynamic thing, but he always catches the ball clean. He usually makes the right decision. And it's funny because as soon as the Nixon thing happened, I'm like, well, that's why Jaden Reed's usually back there to make the right decision. And then what does he do on the very next play? He catches it at the 1 yard, like the half-yard line, and then gets it to all the way to the 4. And I'm just like, I don't know at this point. I don't know who you put back there. I don't know what the right answer is. I was shocked that they put Nixon back there again after that happened. There's not really a great player on the team that I feel like, yep, that's the person who should do it. But they obviously need to practice it more because that was a nightmare and it could have legitimately cost them the game.
100%. Hopefully this week is spent going over the rules of punt returning because, man, I just can't, Andy. I need competence. All we need is competence, and we're going to win going away.
Forgettable special teams for just forgettable special. I don't
even want to know about it.
You have to talk about it. Just
do they have special teams? I didn't even notice. That's where I want to live. That's where I want to live. That's where I want to exist. I love existing every Monday. Chatting ball with you, Andy, is always a good time. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later this week as we preview the matchup with the Jaguars. Appreciate it as always, man.
Can't wait. Thanks so much, Aaron.